Welcome to another episode of Four Guys Talking About AI. I'm here with my good buddies Greg Sterling and Neil Polachek, and our friend John Gerard is not available today, so it's going to be the three of us. How's it going, guys?
Good. How are you?
Really good. Really good.
Good. All right. Well, let's cover off on this week's news. China's Kling AI. It's a video AI generative tool. Super impressive, interesting things coming out of that large language model. Shopify CEO says that staffers need to prove that jobs can't be done by AI before asking for more headcount. Likely a trend that we'll start to see. We'll talk about that. There's a Pew story about how people are using AI. OpenAI also, there's an article about how OpenAI could be a systemic risk to the tech industry, given their business model, and the faster they grow, the more money they need. And can they actually catch up with that, or is that a loop that isn't tied together? The costs and the expenses, and the costs and the revenue not tied together there. There's word about ChatGPT's numbers also. How fast are they growing? It's pretty incredible how fast they're growing, but we'll dig into some of those numbers and how people are using AI these days. We'll dig into that a little bit. So let's start off with this story about China's Kling AI. Kling AI is a large language model coming out of China. It rivals Sora and other video generative tools. One of the very cool things about it that is really interesting is that it's outstanding at doing deepfake capabilities. And there are ripples in Hollywood about how you can just create a movie these days with no-name actors, and then literally just slap on the faces of well-known actors onto their faces. Lots of other capability in that platform. What do you guys think about this?
The example that they have on their Instagram site is from the Apple TV show Severance, where Adam Scott, I believe that's the actor's name, is walking down a corridor, and they swap in Taylor Swift. It's not just the face; it's her whole body. So literally, they substitute her for him in the same shot, and she does the same movements. It was pretty impressive just from that one. I mean, that could be some highly edited demo clip and maybe not fulfilled in the, demos are different, but assuming that it works like that, it's very, very technically impressive. And what could go wrong with something like that?
I think about it this way, Greg, you and I might want to do a video for our little business. We could hire somebody to sort of do the words and the mannerisms, and then just throw us on top of it. And then we're not babbling and over speaking where,
it's not about the script. It's about the physical appearance of the.
Well, right. We can take over that appearance. I mean, there's so many ways to play with it.
You could pay a celebrity to license their likeness, not for their performance. You license their likeness. You shoot a film or whatever it is, commercial, with somebody who's very cheap to use because they're not recognized. And then you swap in the identity of the celebrity, and the whole thing is much less expensive. It's like a voice actor for an animated film. Voice actors, regardless of their stature, get much less money than a live action actor because presumably the work is less demanding or something.
Imagine two no-name tennis players, and then you slap on, Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe in a new tennis match.
I mean, there's a lot of positive use cases, and
I'm not saying it's positive. I'm just saying that'd be mind-blowing.
Well, in New Jersey, they just passed a law, and I'm not looking at it, to outlaw deep fakes and the sharing of deep fakes. And I assume that the deep fake has to be some sort of legal violation, like a copyright violation or some sort of, infringement of somebody's rights or something that runs afoul of the law. But I don't think it just says no deep fakes at all. But maybe it's broad enough, and they just made it illegal to produce them and to share them in New Jersey, because I think people are concerned about the potential for abuse, even though the technology is very, very, very impressive.
I mean, I think about it in the sports world. I mean, it's just kind of mind blowing what you could do with it.
maybe a more, kind of pedestrian view on this is, there are platforms like HeyGen and 11 Labs that are mostly designed for this kind of thing, right? So HeyGen is a video platform, generative video platform, where you can create avatars. You can use avatars that are in their library and then give it scripts. They use it mostly for remote learning and this kind of thing. But what you can do is you can create an avatar of yourself and then
Right.
create all kinds of social media clips or your own
Right.
learning management system internally for your company or what have you. But you could also take that idea, hire somebody who is an influencer or maybe it's not a very well-known actor, but they're dynamic, they're interesting, they've got maybe a following on Instagram, and source them with their permission, just as an example, and then scale that person, license their likeness essentially. And I'm guessing that that's going to be a trend. I think that those people are going to want to get paid and replicate themselves, and they're not going to actually want to do all of these video clips that they're currently doing. And if they can scale it, I would imagine they will.
I think that exists with audiobooks. I don't know if it's Audible or one of the other companies that's doing a kind of a new deal. This is from memory, so it may not be accurate. They're doing it. They're doing a deal where they license the voice of the actor, and then they're going to use that to produce multiple performances without having to bring that person in real time and do the reading.
Yeah.
Just using an AI system, but replicating the voice.
Well,
Yeah.
in the gaming space, Madden 2000, all the football and baseball and golf video games, you can now do live action and slap on the image of, with their permission, and pay Tiger Woods money now, where they do it on a golf course instead of animated. And
Yeah.
I mean, there are all sorts of
Sky's the limit, really,
yeah.
Well, it raises the question, which is the question for all of these things, the larger question about all these beneficial use cases and novel and creative opportunities that arise. Plus, there's a sort of an equal complement of bad use cases. How do you manage those? Because obviously, so social media as an exemplar of this initially was heralded as a way to bring people together and all these beneficial things. And as it's turned out, it's not been such a great thing for society. And there's no regulation of that. We're moving away from regulation. So, I mean, we don't necessarily have to answer that. This is an ongoing discussion. I don't think we can answer this today, but it's a half empty, half full conversation, but you have to sort of account for the half empty part, because think about all the stuff with teenage girls and school and people taking their images and manipulating them, and it's really kind of horrible to think about. And I just see this as the next level of that, basically.
But what's interesting is, and we'll talk about this later, is some of this data that this guy at Harvard has pulled out that puts companionship and therapy as the highest use case. There's not demonstrative data, but when we talk about that, that'll come back to this, which is kind of
right. You're talking about
let's segue into that. I mean, while we're talking about it, it's an interesting point. There's a Harvard Business Review article talking about how people are using AI. Greg, you want to talk a little bit about this?
Sure. This is an April 9 article entitled "How People Are Really Using Gen AI in 2025," and it compares 2024 use cases using a similar methodology to 2025. And the methodology is sort of complicated. It's a combination of different information sources to try and ascertain how are people really using AI. There's a nice looking graphic that kind of lays it out. And I'll just read the top 5 from 2024 and then the top 5 from 2025. So they say in 2024, the top use cases were generating ideas, therapy/companionship, specific search, which I guess is people doing search-like behavior, editing text, exploring topics of interest. Those are the top 5 for 2024. Now, 2025 is different. Therapy and companionship moves up to number 1. 2 is organizing my life, which is a new use case. 3 is finding purpose, an existential, metaphysical use case, which is a new use case coming out of nowhere. Number 4 is enhanced learning. And number 5 is generating code for pros, meaning I guess people who are doing it professionally. And that last one, generating code, jumped from number 47 in 2024.
And the AI models have gotten incredibly better at being able to generate code and have a canvas to be able to do that in the testing environment. It's pretty sophisticated. It's interesting. What jumps out at me on that one is number 3 this year, is finding purpose, this new use case where, if you extrapolate out, we've talked a lot about how, if and how AI is going to replace jobs and what that looks like. And when you end game that and you look at will jobs be replaced, and if people don't have jobs, then employment and your own personal satisfaction that you get from your work drives a sense of purpose in a way that is very hard to replace. And so if people are already looking for finding purpose as a primary use case in today's environment, I can only imagine, how that continues to play out.
Think about the top 3 in 2025: therapy, companionship, organizing
they're all a version.
life, which is the new use case, and finding purpose. All those are about, they're
all the same.
Self-improvement. Yeah.
They're on a continuum. They're all very personal, individual use cases: mentorship, companionship, therapy,
and healthier living was 75 and is number 10 this year. So body and mind.
Right. But those top 3 are really a version of a kind of a similar thing, which is help me make decisions, help me understand things, help me clarify my own goals, interests, situation. Really different from the B2B use cases that we encounter and deal with every day. Really radically different. And maybe, this is a giant leap. There was an Ipsos survey that I shared in our Slack channel that said basically, there have been all these surveys, including one that we did in November. Are you using AI? How often are you using it? What are you using it for? And this Ipsos survey was a little over 1,000, I think, respondents. It came out in March, and 66% of adults said that they had used AI. Doesn't speak to frequency, although 45% were, I believe it was 45% who were often. There was some language that suggested it wasn't daily, weekly, monthly. It was rarely. It was like rarely, sometimes never kind of stuff. But it suggested a high degree of frequency, so at least weekly. So we've got higher penetration numbers and increasing frequency. And the top use cases there were shopping and search, sort of as a search replacement, and then like finding out information about products and places. So they were sort of local search and product search kinds of scenarios, or product comparisons, or researching places. So these are straight up search use cases, but this is very different than that. This is very, very different. This is something, much more intimate, much more personal, much more like a companion, the her scenario sort of, than as a business tool or as a work tool, which it still is as well.
And, in that context, OpenAI just announced recently that they have expanded their memory beyond just individual chats, right? So the ability for it to have a memory across all of your chats and compile this background information and this kind of tapestry of who you are as a result of that, so that the answers not only become more personalized, but they also become more germane to sort of like where you're coming from.
Think about the 30 sessions you have with this thing, or the companion thing,
that's
or the
kind of where I'm going with that.
It starts to pull that together. It says, listen, you asked about this, you wondered about this. What are you doing about these things?
So let me, in my role as Debbie Downer here, let me bring up a related and concerning point. So if you think about smartphones, right? You have all this personal data on your smartphone, payments information, your location history, all of this material, images of your family and other things, very, very highly personal. And there's been a lot of talk about security, about who has access to that data, sharing that data, keeping it private. Just as a quick digression, so Siri and Apple are making all apps data available for training for the AI. They're trying to do some whole convoluted thing around privacy, but basically the default setting now is share all your data with Siri if through these apps. Share the app's data. And in order to shut that off, you have to go through manually, and app by app, you have to say, don't share, don't share, don't share, don't share. The point of this story is that people are very sensitive to privacy on their smartphones. This is way, way more personal. People are telling all kinds of personal information to ChatGPT and these AI therapy bots way beyond what's going on your phone. You know, your fantasies, your relationship with your mom, you know, I want to kill my boss, whatever it is, right? So think about all that stuff and think about some backdoor, you know, some law enforcement. I mean, they're always trying to get access to Google and Apple data. Like there was a whole big row in the UK about that, a universal backdoor into iPhones. And there's all kinds of legal activity around getting warrantless searches and all of this. It's a Pandora's box, right? So before you know it, you've told your whole life story and all kinds of things. You know, it's a confessional. You're telling, you know, you're doing all these things which are unethical or maybe even illegal. It's a treasure trove for law enforcement and for espionage.
Well, you know, it's interesting because we don't have to go deep into this technology, but Andreessen Horowitz came up with this article about this concept of MCP. It's a new protocol that makes it really easy for AI agents to interoperate with other APIs and other systems, right? So if you take that idea, Greg, that you're talking about, and the interoperability that opens up, and where that data can go, and then you look at it on the backdrop of you know, whether you share DNA data with you know,
23andMe.
23andMe or any of these other companies
Who resells it? Who resells it?
There really have to be some you know, proactive protocols. Apple's been probably the most aggressive. Google's been also somewhat aggressive in their messaging to customers. I'd say Apple's probably been a better steward of that privacy data. But
well, they bank on privacy. I mean, that's their
that's their message, right? So OpenAI, other companies like that are going to have to adopt that kind of messaging as well for this really.
Well, not just messaging. They need to educate people, but also have the security in place so that, not to get political here, but what's one of the things that's happened in the wake of all the cuts in the government is that we are much less defended from a cybersecurity perspective than we were. We are much more vulnerable to hacking and cyber attacks now than we were before January 20th. And it's, you know, I mean, people just don't game out all the scenarios because they're not thinking about it. They're mesmerized by all the cool things that you can do, but there's a lot of really sort of scary stuff that could happen. Imagine a system using the MCP idea that, you know, I could sit in a room somewhere in some non-extradition country and get all kinds of information about every single U.S. citizen and tap into all these databases and fraud. And I mean, this fraud is getting much, much more sophisticated, partly because of AI. So we live in a world of increased convenience and cool stuff and sci-fi coming to life, but also much, much greater risk that almost nobody appreciates, except on the level of vague anxiety, which we could use to segue into the Pew discussion if you want.
Hold on, though. My cynical view is that the fraudsters and the people trying to stop the fraud are in cahoots. They have been for years.
Oh, are you going to be a guest on Joe Rogan relatively soon, Neil?
I'm just saying. I mean, cybersecurity.
They keep each other in business. Yeah, there's a handshake deal in the background.
100%.
Well, interesting. Like as we're talking about this, you've got Ilya Sutskever, his AI company, Safe Superintelligence. He left OpenAI to create this new company called Safe Superintelligence that purportedly is designed to create safety in this kind of environment. And just this week, it was announced that his company is valued at $32 billion.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a product yet.
They don't even have a product yet, which, is both, noteworthy and also concerning a little bit, because there's a history of these super large valuation companies that don't have a product yet that never make it to market. So I hope that's not the case with him.
Well, people are investing in his track record, and they're just trying to get into something they think could be successful, obviously.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about this scenario with Shopify CEO talking about how staffers are going to need to prove that jobs can't be done by AI before asking for more headcount. So this is taking a decidedly hard look at human expenses, and whether AI can do these jobs
and workflow processes.
Yeah, and really kind of forcing the company to redefine ways that they work to be able to. Do you need a human to actually do that job, or can AI do it? To me, this is a bit of a turning point, because
at least symbolically.
At least symbolically, I mean, but you have to imagine. I mean, he's all in on it, and behind it, and what that means is that job board on Shopify is going to shrink pretty quickly. They're not going to be hiring anytime soon for a lot of positions, I would imagine, and other companies will likely follow suit. And we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording the episode, but especially in a downturn kind of a market, right, where there's going to be economic incentives to keep your head count low.
For sure. I mean, one put on my Neil Polachek cynicism hat. He could have been also playing to investors with that commentary. Like, we're going to be super controlled with our costs, and this is a great. Investors love layoffs and cost belt tightening and expense reduction. I undoubtedly he's sincere, but there's a little bit of I think playing to
you hear that same message from Mark Benioff at Salesforce as well, and starting to echo that in the market.
It's pretty profound, though. It's a pretty profound statement, I think.
I quickly looked up Glassdoor's rating for Shopify.
Is it 1 star?
Well, it's 3.3, which is pretty low. Says it's not that great a place to work anyhow.
Yeah, getting worse.
Who you're talking to, I mean, if a lot of those reviews are from customer support agents that just recently got replaced, you can see
right. One of the things that's been interesting to me to think about, and I don't have enough perspective on this, is the degree to which you have to reorganize the whole company in order to fully optimize AI. You can't really just plug it in. You can plug it in here and there, but in order to get the full benefit, you have to really rethink the whole organization and workflows and all of that. And that's kind of what's implied, but I don't hear that him saying that in that comment. I hear him saying we're going to save money.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to slow on the hiring. I don't think it's going to be we're going to fire people. We're letting people go.
That's right. It's like we have our existing people, but we're not going to let anybody else in the door absent some extraordinary justification.
Yeah, you just got to justify why that resource is needed. But the general idea that I see this as is that we always talk about how AI can give you superpowers in many ways, and it can. It's pretty. Those are kind of wild moments when they happen, and I think what he's likely doing, it sounds like, is asking his team to embrace
use
that.
it. Yeah, use it figured out how it works.
He's forcing them to use it. It's a coercive thing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's his brilliance. There is to force people to find ways to use it so that they're better off. They have a
Well,
superpower.
it's coercive though. It's coercive. It's like you have to engage with this enough to the point where you can understand what its limitations are versus a human. I think the ambition to get people to use it is worthwhile. I think the methodologies maybe, from my point of view, problematic. What I was trying to imply with the Accenture stuff is that what he's really doing is he's saying we as an organization need to really embrace this technology in a more complete way. But he's not saying let's really think about it comprehensively top to bottom, and let's do a reorg that optimizes workflows with AI agents in the mix. He's saying you can't hire anybody. This is sort of the poor man's version of that much more difficult exercise, which is you can't hire anybody unless you can show me that AI can't do that job.
Forcing your staff to use AI is that's what's going to give your company a competitive advantage. I mean, we've all heard the phrase that it's not AI that's going to take jobs; it's people who use AI that will take your job.
Yeah, the real statement is it's not AI that's going to take your job; it's AI that's going to take your job.
Could be. I mean, we'll see, right? And I can definitely see a path how that could happen. But in the meantime, there's a stepping stone, and much in the same way that I feel that way when I hop into an Uber and I'm sitting there with somebody that I know that their job's going to be eliminated in the next
5 years,
the next decade,
10 years,
5-10 years, whatever it may be. But in the meantime, there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of work that needs to get done, and those companies will break out that utilize these capabilities.
Absolutely. I'm not anti-AI. I'm not arguing against AI. I mean, it sounds like I am, but I'm not really. Pew Research has been doing these AI-related surveys. Have you used it? Are you excited or are you anxious about the future with AI? Sort of general public surveys about how people, are they aware of it? Do they understand it? What do they think about it? Are they using it? And the short version of the most recent one, the most recent survey is entitled, or their write-up of the survey is called How the U.S. Public and AI Experts View Artificial Intelligence. And the finding is that the public at large, U.S. adults, and experts, who are presumably people working closely with AI or have subject matter knowledge, are very, very far apart. And what that means is that experts have a positive view. The public has a more negative than positive view. Experts think AI is going to improve their lives, make the future better. Very upbeat. 75% think that there's going to be personal benefits to them. And only 15% think that there's going to be harm to them. Whereas the public, only 24% think that there's going to be a benefit to them. 33% aren't sure. And 43%, the largest single group, think it's going to be harmful. So some of that is about a lack of experience. What Neil and I found in our surveys is that the more experienced people are with AI, the more that they have a positive view of it and recognize its benefits for them. But part of this is also about job displacement, fear of job loss. And experts are not fearing that, and ordinary people who don't understand exactly how to use it or may feel like it's a scary thing are fearful that it's going to take their job. And that's kind of a vague sense that they have. And there's been a lot of coverage about that issue. And so it's kind of in the zeitgeist for people.
Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of fear with AI and how you have a lot of people expressing how it's going to harm them long term. And what you just said, Greg, for example, is that it's not. What did you say? That it's not AI that's going to take the jobs; it's AI that's going to take the jobs.
Exactly. I'm turning the. It's not. The little cute phrase is it's not AI. It's a person who knows how to use AI, implying that everybody who's got some knowledge of AI is going to be safe and other people are not. But I think really what Shopify and what I mean, some of the pitches from some of these companies, there was a billboard. I don't know which company it's associated with. So as you're heading east on what's the Bay Bridge, basically the run up to the Bay
Heading
Bridge, and
west. West
no,
and east. Put them up there.
west and east. There are billboards on either side of the freeway, and in at least one case, it was one of these AI startups. It's like stop hiring humans. They're promoting the idea that you can replace humans with machines. And Microsoft at one point was pitching something like that, sort of cost reduction, save money, don't hire people, use these machines. So it's definitely it's one of the selling propositions for certain companies around their AI products. So it's not just like, this is going to upskill your existing workforce. It's straight up, you don't need to hire people anymore. Or if people leave, you can replace them with machines, and it's not going to be as expensive for you as it was. No benefits, no retirement, no pesky litigation potential when somebody harasses you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I kind of go back to our story last week about EQ and people who use AI who have a high EQ and utilizing the technology in a way that makes it more human. There's this, at least as a gap anyway. I mean, maybe this evolves to it being where they are overlords, and we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, having a high EQ rather, and understanding human behavior, understanding psychology and what people are really looking for in an experience, and then being able to deliver on that by utilizing the tools. That's a unique skill set. And I think that for the foreseeable future, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to bridge that gap.
Well, there definitely is. There's always going to be a need for humans. The question is how many humans, right? I mean, you go from organizations that have 100,000 employees down to organizations that have 50% of that, or maybe even less than that. That's really the question. It's not that all jobs will be eliminated. It's just going to be, there's going to be less of a need for as many people. So the numbers of jobs are going to be fewer in certain industries, and the competitiveness for those jobs will presumably increase. We'll see.
Well, and you mentioned upskilling, and just a minute ago. I tend to think that in this interim period before,
before Skynet comes,
the end game. What do you call it?
The AI apocalypse.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So, before that happens, in the meantime, people are going to have to upskill, and
they're going to have to analyze those spreadsheets and produce those slide presentations, and
or at
all
least
of that
know what the right questions are to ask, and get some familiarity with it so that it can return the right result.
AI has been an invaluable tool to both Neil and me, and similar in different ways, and we use it every day, and we couldn't do our two-person company without it, So there's no argument about its utility at all. It's just the larger societal impact is, every organization will find powerful use cases and value, and many of the people in the organization working with AI will find a lot of value. It's just that, Wall Street isn't going to hire as many MBAs, and you're not going to need as many paralegals, and you're not going to need as many knowledge workers and
radiologists.
Right, all of that stuff. And so the question for the society is, what do you do with all those people, which we're not going to answer on this podcast today, but
we retrain them to be plumbers and carpenters and the trades that have always lately have been sort of pushed aside. And that's why it's cost so much to do that stuff these days.
There's also a group, I was reading an article about this sort of mismatch between the availability of jobs and the people to do them. There's a bunch of sort of mid-level jobs that are not trades and not purely information workers, like, medical technicians and people like that. And there's a lot of these jobs, but the system is inefficient in matching people or making people aware of these opportunities, which is something that presumably AI could solve for people with some massive database.
Yeah. Here's the thing. All you have to do is look at the actuarial tables and the number of senior citizens that are going to be needing help in the next 20 years. it will never be larger than that. It's going to be the largest group of senior citizens ever. And there are very few senior citizen people to help those senior citizens. So if we don't have a lot of jobs for those people, a good place for them to go is to be healthcare, senior citizens, port workers, that kind of stuff.
Well, there's a
man.
Working with seniors is very hard unless you're like
you know why it's so hard, Greg? Because the ones that do it are so overworked because there's so few.
Difficult work, not well paid very often, and very demanding, with cranky seniors who are sliding into dementia and rude, and there's all that kind of stuff. Andy's over this conversation, I'm sure.
This is you're kind of laying the foundation for why robotics in this in this scenario, and that's, I would imagine, is going to be a very large consumer based kind of use case. As the robotics marketplace really starts to pick up, which is projected for the next 5 years. I mean, if you're able to lease a fully functioning robot that can do chores, that can run errands, that can take care of you, you can train it up to even change your IV, and all of this kind of thing. It's the impact there is pretty profound in terms of the cost per hour that it's going to take to provide that kind of value.
Yeah.
So it's compelling. We're way at the beginning of this curve. It's not even in market yet. Although I'm sure the three of us are reading a lot about how this market is like the biggest untapped market ever yet. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll also see how that Pew report maps against the adoption, right? Are people going to be afraid of it, or are they going to adopt it?
People are definitely using it. I mean, look at the Harvard Business Review discussion about how people are using it for these personal use cases. People are definitely using it, even as they may be fearful of the long-term impact on their job security and society as a whole. They're definitely using it. I mean, I don't know a person who, I mean, my last night I came upstairs and my wife was using ChatGPT to write kind of poems for some work-related event, and she was just marveling at the capability. Put in a few ideas and then come out with this creative stuff. Just the last thing that can segue into ChatGPT, if we want to talk about that, is the image update that occurred a few weeks ago that people went crazy over. We talked about it a little bit. The most visible thing was the ability to create these, sort of copyrighted look and feel characters like Muppets or Studio Ghibli, the Japanese anime stuff. And people just went berserk. And Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, said that they had something like 700 million images created in some very compressed period of time. And it was just a massive, and they got all these new users. So people are just very enamored of all the creative capabilities of these tools. And they're just driving a lot of viral usage. I mean, this is, there's been no marketing per se. There's a little bit of marketing for ChatGPT, but not really. It's all PR and viral.
Along the lines of your wife doing the poem, I was at a funeral yesterday. And as I listened to the eulogies, I was wondering, okay,
how much of this is ChatGPT?
Well, that one was ChatGPT.
That's hilarious.
That one wasn't. That one might have been.
Well, what was the telltale signal to you of that?
It just sounded kind of generic.
In the world of living people.
Well, that, but it had this generic feel to it.
Yeah.
That I thought, after I was listening to it for a while, I thought, wow, I'm wondering if the grandson, this was the grandson.
How old was it? Well, how old?
He's a physician. He's probably
so he's
40.
an adult. He's an adult. Okay, yeah.
Oh yeah. And I thought, well, kind of sounds like a pretty generic chat.
I bet you're right. bet you're right.
So I think everybody who goes to a funeral should be sort of on the lookout for.
Sure, and it could be like a fun thing if you're not grieving particularly for the
Well,
decedent.
the guy was 100.5, so there was
well,
not a
so
lot of.
if you're removed from the relatives or the family, or you're pretty detached from the grief of the situation, you can play a little game. It's like a bingo kind of game at funerals. Was the eulogy written by ChatGPT or not? Human or ChatGPT?
That's hilarious. All right. Well, hey, let's wrap it up with. So I wrote a haiku about how people are afraid of AI, but they're using it for highly personalized situations.
Read it.
Wary of its gaze, still they whisper wounds into it, a calm glowing screen. And so there's our worldwide release
They
of
whisper wounds. Did you say wounds?
they whisper wounds to it.
Their wounds, meaning their own
Yes,
psychological
wary
stuff.
of its gaze.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Wounds to it, a calm.
It's pretty good. Did you watch the Hulu show Shogun by any chance?
I've heard of
it.
It
Show. It was great. It was a great show. It's a remake of the 70s James Clavell 70s miniseries that was very popular on ABC, remade now in a much more authentic, much richer way. Great show. I recommend it. One of the things that a couple of the characters do on a kind of a semi-ongoing basis is they challenge each other to these haiku style poems. I mean, I don't know if they're technically haikus with the rhyme, the meter, but they're kind of like that. And so they're going back and forth. It's not played for laughs. It's a serious thing, with nature and all of that. You could just whip out your little ChatGPT and, cheat it.
Or did ChatGPT write it, Andy?
That's right. Get your iambic pentameter on. And
right.
Did you write it?
No, that was ChatGPT that wrote.
No, he did ChatGPT because he was inspired by your funeral example.
Exactly. So had to give it a go. We'll carry on next week. Thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, smash that button. Thanks so much. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.